Hey guys, welcome to Unscripted Success, a podcast where I invite amazing guests that have successfully taken the road less traveled, and together we take questions submitted by you, the professional community, on the topics of career and business. And today I have my friend Krissy Wolfe. Krissy, how's it going?
It's great. Loving
Cool.
it.
Let's talk about Krissy for a moment. Krissy Wolfe is the co-founder and COO of CFOAF, a fractional CFO firm driving financial growth for small businesses. Krissy and her husband have been in business together since 2008. Congrats.
Thanks.
And with this experience, as well as her master's in counseling, Krissy has gained a passion for coaching women into empowered living and entrepreneurial couples into harmony. Krissy can easily talk about small business success, staffing your business for growth, or about how to work with your spouse and actually enjoy doing it. And you and I might have to talk about that at some point. Actually,
Sounds great. Yeah.
my poor wife puts up a lot.
Yeah. Get a lot of requests for that.
I bet. Cool. First question here is it possible to be the face of a brand if you're boring? I'm suffering from imposter syndrome. I'm currently the face of my company. My public personality is a persona that is quite different than my true everyday demeanor. When people approach me, they expect that public personality, but in reality, I'm boring as they come and socially awkward. And I'm also past the age some of the people I attract as customers. But the industry I chose seems to demand it. Once people get to know me, they discover that I am quite awkward. I'm burning out living this double life with the feeling like I'll be found out. Will I ever get to just be myself? And if I'm this boring, could I still be the face of my company?
I mean, can boring be a brand? I feel like you have to capitalize on what you are. Like, is there a way to just like dryly approach how boring you are? I feel like so many of us, I think there's this part of all of us that wonders if we're just a little bit boring or a little bit basic, or like, I'm going to call her Nancy. So when Nancy said,
Right.
you know, just feeling like they have imposter syndrome and being boring, it makes me sort of wonder, like, does Nancy just feel like she's boring in comparison to other people, right? There's got to be something interesting about her. But I feel like if not, like, I don't know, I'm not a branding expert, but I'm more of a people expert. But I think, I mean, why can't she be a brand? I feel like everybody's kind of struggling with the same thing. Maybe that's relatable. I don't know. What do you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm getting ready to do a course about social media marketing, things like that. And one of the things that I took pause to ask myself is like, okay, if part of the magic of social media and getting attention is to be entertaining, what does it mean to be entertaining? And most people, I think our knee-jerk reaction is to be funny, to be comedic, right? And so I went kind of down this rabbit hole, and ChatGPT helped where
I love GPT.
right? Oh man, like it's made my life so much easier. But yeah, like I went down this rabbit hole, is like trying to figure out what else is entertaining, right? And so aside from comedy, there's something that's cringy, or there's like why Karen videos are popular, right? Like, or what else? There's the cutesy videos there, and it was this ChatGPT listed like this 20 different things that are very distinctly recognizably entertaining.
Okay, I have to do this.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'll send it to you. It's pretty amazing to think about it. I think it could help anyone in the marketing. But and that's what even just going through that, I realized in my own content, what I've been able to accomplish is like probably at least 10 of the 20 or so things on that list are things that my content hits. And so anyway, so not to toot my own horn, but going back to this question, maybe you're boring, but what else? Like, there's got to be something else about you that is entertaining. Or there's, I forget her name. Sally Hogshead has that whole How to Fascinate, where there's all these different concepts about how, like, you as an individual, how can you be fascinating to other people? Being boring or not boring that's just a very binary thing, and it's not. There's more ways to be fascinating to people besides just be boring or not boring. You know what I mean?
And then it's such a subjective thing too. Like, there's people that I meet that probably are very fascinating to other people, but maybe I'm like, this is the dumbest topic, or like they're fascinated with something that I'm just not interested in. And I'm not a huge fan of small talk, so sometimes that can ruin it for me. But I mean, surely Nancy has a story to tell. Something about her life is like, nobody's never had anything not happen, right? So it's something in her life or about her life is interesting. I actually took this online LinkedIn course recently, and it was like a 30-minute thing. It was actually my first time doing it, and I thought it was really cool. So I'm doing like housework, and I'm listening to this guy talk about basically kind of like how to hone your story. And he does this, he tells you to do this writing exercise where you have to write down like 3 things that you're super passionate about, and then like ask yourself 3 questions about it. And it basically creates sort of a tic-tac-toe board. And then he said, those are your topics, and really it looks like it's only 3, but then I went through this whole exercise when I was done listening, and it was mind-blowing. And I got so much good writing out of it that I haven't even used. But I would suggest Nancy do that, because I bet there's something about her life that she really cares about, and it's not boring at all.
I would totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
And to go back to your original question, like, well, how much of you thinking you're boring is really subjective, right? And even then, if you are truly boring, like, why not take ownership of that? And so then that makes me think of, like, there's the Ben Steins of the world, or like, what's the guy, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry. Larry David.
Yeah, the Larry David show.
Yeah, so like all those guys I would kind of consider boring in a way, but they've owned it. They've like rolled with it. So I think there's something to that too, if you truly are boring also.
Well, maybe her brand could be like a sleep channel where she talks about her stuff in her monotone voice and combines it with like, like, I'm going to just lull you to sleep with this boring information.
That's a great idea.
Sit and listen to it. Like, I'm just going to go to sleep, but Nancy's my girl.
Yeah. That's what that have you seen these videos of the girl who's a graphic designer and she intentionally redoes like famous logos, but she does them bad? Have you ever seen this girl?
No, but I would be in love with that. That sounds great.
I forget her name, but she's actually very monotone. Like, she's just very blasé. Like, I'm going to redo Sonic's logo, and she gets a ton of business from that, because obviously she's a good graphic designer, but she just completely went the other direction in how she promotes it. So
do you think she's doing that on purpose, or do you think that's her real personality?
I think some of it's intentional, because I think I looked her up one time, and like all the content you see from her, if you're not looking for it, is that it's her redoing a bad brand's logo badly, and she's very monotone and blasé about it. But if you look up the rest of her content, she actually has other content where you're assuming you can see the rest of her personality too. But I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good shtick, I guess.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. That's a great take. I'm glad that you brought up the whole, like, just if you're boring, take ownership of it.
Great. I mean, I guess you could really brand anything, right?
Cool. Question number 2. This says, how do I split a company with a partner? I am a part-time developer slowly working on an app project. An old friend who is an entrepreneur offered to partner up and form a 50-50 split company. I do the development, he does the accounting and marketing. He would not dedicate much time at the moment, but closer to launch, he would work more as the company picks up. And in theory, I would work less as the app is launched and requires less development. I'm just wondering how you feel about this, if it is normal, or if you have any advice to share.
My husband actually does operating agreements. So even though he does, I feel like this is going to be maybe a boring answer. Here comes Nancy. But, yeah, so you really have to, like, he has that kind of gradual progression, and you really have to draft all that out, right? So you're going to have to sit down and write down, like, what is it going to take to start the business? What is it going to take to launch the business? What is it going to take to do the business? And what is it going to take to scale the business? And then you have to also look at the chance that there could be future partners. And then when that happens, typically you're going to be pulling equitably from each person's share, although that's not necessarily true, because it could depend. And then you also have to have in there, like, what if they don't do what they're supposed to do, right? So all of that has to be lined up. I don't know that I'm like super passionate about operating agreements, but they are so obviously they're not exactly fun. That's a real dry thing. But it is like, man, I'm like neither here nor there on prenups, but when it comes to operating agreements, absolutely better do one, because it's not a matter of will something go wrong, it's a matter of when something will go wrong. And if you have everything already outlined and have all those uncomfortable conversations on the front end, then when something goes badly, you could be like, bro, we talked about this, and according to page 3 of our agreement, if this happened after this much time, this was going to be the action taken. and even the opportunity to be able to buy out somebody if they're not doing their part, or if you have to hire somebody to do a part of their job that they just refuse to do, like say they're in charge of bookkeeping and they just don't ever make time for it, and you're 6 months behind on that, then hiring of the bookkeeper needs to come out of that person's side because they failed to deliver what they agreed to deliver for the amount of money that they agreed to.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that has to be clearly outlined.
Yeah. And that's the thing is I think so many people, when they go into business and then go into partnerships, is they like everything is all easy and warm and fuzzies at the beginning, right? So like, why would you not have the conversation earlier when it's easy, when everyone is okay and being open? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there's that raw enthusiasm. Like we all, like we think all of our ideas are super great in the moment. And we don't really want to look at the things that could and maybe will go wrong. You don't want to be pessimistic. It's like people thinking that they shouldn't buy life insurance because it's like bad luck. But the reality of it is things are going to go wrong. And I would rather while I'm in the honeymoon phase with a business partner, have those and be like, it's never going to happen. We're going to be best friends and business partners forever. Like, let's do it then before like they actually start letting you down. And then it's like, oh crap. Like, this is the one thing I didn't want to bring up in the beginning conversations. And now this is an actual issue. And I knew deep down this was going to happen.
Yeah. Like that, having that practicality, I guess. Like I'm a fractional CMO that owns some shares in a business when they invited me to come on basically. And these guys, I think I'm probably about 10 years their senior at least. And I went in and was like, okay, what's the agreement? Like, what's the exit? What's all this stuff? And oh yeah, I guess we haven't thought about that too much. And I'm like, yeah, look, can we have that conversation? Would that be okay? Because, like I know myself well enough and like, let's just be honest and, all that type of stuff. So very, very important. And honestly, I think early on that also even helps facilitate more trust because you're not just thinking about yourself and about how you're going to enter this business, but also you're thinking about the other person. And I think that shows some goodwill too.
That's a great point. Yeah. Because you're kind of looking, you can't do an operating agreement and not look at the big picture. And it also helps you to start thinking too, like about the big picture. Like, what is our plan for growth? Like, what are our strategies going to, you can't plan for every inevitability, but it can kind of give you the opportunity to jump in the plane and get that aerial view of the situation and start to map it out. And then that's just good for the business, period. Absolutely.
There were some red flags that kind of stood out to me too here. Like first thing they mentioned is a 50-50 split of the company. I'm not sure. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I would never recommend having a 50-50 split ever in any circumstance.
Yeah, I don't know what Byron's view is on that too, but I know one thing you have to consider is like what startup capital is required and who's providing that. Because I've never seen it be equitable, like there's always somebody who's got more money than the rest of the people in the situation. So that would have an impact on it too. But I mean, even if somebody, I believe it's like over 19 and a half or it's like right below 20, like they still have decision making. So I don't know that 50-50 would make a huge difference once they hit that 20% mark or just over that. Then I think they still have to be included in all those big decisions.
That's a great point to point out for anyone listening that's thinking about this, and this happens to be a situation there. And that's a great thing to look into. That's awesome.
Yeah. I know that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking at their question again, also like, I'm trying to figure out how, like another red flag to me, I guess, is they made the comment that, on the front end, when the business and this app is getting built, it's the developer that's doing most of the legwork. And then the onus switches when they launch. And I'm sitting here thinking like, I don't build a product and then decide how to market it. You know what I mean?
That's a really good point too, but that's your wheelhouse.
Yeah. I would like to think so, but I wouldn't get that far down the road. And then like I see so many people do it. And I live in a college town and, with Shark Tank and things like that going, like a lot of these students I run into almost on a daily basis are all thinking, well, when I get out of college, I just said I'm going to start a business or something like that. And they have this whole grand scheme and this vision of what the business is, but no clue on how they're going to promote it. And it's just like, come on, like you might want to reel it in a little bit and think about like all the other things that aren't the exciting things to you in order to make this successful.
Yeah, but now that you got me thinking about it, like the first isn't, I mean, I don't know, again, I'm not a branding person or a marketing person, but I mean, knowing who your avatar is and who your customer is should be first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you don't actually know that, then have you really honed in on the product or the service that you're offering? Like, how can you really define and refine that if you don't know who you're selling it to?
Absolutely. And I think that absolutely comes into like that is definitely a facet of marketing. And do you really know how effective your product is going to be if you don't know who your ideal avatar is?
Yeah.
Right. Cool. Next question. Let's see. This person says, I'm introverted, but entrepreneurially, there's a mouthful, entrepreneurially minded, where to find a more outgoing partner. And then they say, I've been at my company for 4 years. I enjoy the job security, work-life balance, and pay, but I feel the urge to start a side business, something that I could eventually replace my income with. My skills are mainly in software, focusing on back-end web engineering and data engineering with hobbies in AI automation and so forth. Though I have attempted a few independent ventures in the past, I struggle to attract clients due to my inability to market myself. I recognize that I lack marketing skills, but this has also made it difficult to find a business partner who could handle that aspect. How do I put myself out there and find a partner who could complement my skills, turning my technical abilities into a viable business?
Gosh, like this was really like a lot was firing off for me in this one. This is a fun question for me. And I just posted about introverts today. I don't know if you saw that. So like with my background in psychology and counseling and that type of thing, like I'm very much into like personality tests, and being introverted is there's some complexities to that, and there's so many parts of this that I would love to like focus on. But I would say, like, first of all, I love introverts, like, huge fan. You know, they have so many great skills. They're great listeners, very empathetic, great leaders, oftentimes. I mean, they hold a lot of space for creativity and innovation. And so, you know, for that, I just love introverts.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this introverted person, you know, could do a couple of things to help themselves. First of all, like maybe work on some of the stuff that they feel insecure about, because just because you're an introvert doesn't necessarily mean that you're socially awkward or you don't know how to talk to people or you don't know how to network or anything like that. So I would say to, you know, focus on, I think that person should make a list of things that they're really good at and makes a list of things that they're not so great at. And before they start looking for a partner, potentially start working on some of the things that they feel like is an area of weakness or opportunity for them. They could even do something like Toastmasters, or, you know, I don't know what the cool new thing is for, like, you know, but, you know, maybe start working on some of the skills that they need to be better in social situations. And then I would say just start networking. Join a networking group that has something to do with your field, or maybe some, you know, something that's complementary, and just get out there and just put on a big smile and make excessively weird eye contact and shake everybody's hand and just start meeting people. And like the best way to meet people is outside of your comfort zone. So I would definitely encourage them to do that. And then I would start like posting like on social media and LinkedIn about like my topic a lot, and start seeing who is engaging on it, you know, like maybe and then start like looking at people with the skill sets that I'm interested in on LinkedIn. You know, like that's such a great platform for looking for specific topics, because the hashtags actually relate back to something and they aren't just funny. So I would definitely start engaging with people on there. But I think if you know, if you really start getting yourself out there, it'd be impossible not to meet somebody in conversation. Like we've just met so many great, like we're partners in over 20 businesses, but it wasn't because we didn't meet people. It wasn't because we didn't leave our house. It's because we got out there and we met people. And as I'm somebody who I consider myself an ambivert, somebody who because I'm very much in the middle and my test kind of goes back and forth, I don't always want to be extroverted. I'm not always feeling up to it. But when you start to see that it connects back to something that you're super passionate about, it makes it so much easier. And one thing that I would encourage people who are introverted before they go into a networking or a social situation where they might get to meet potential affiliates or partners or people that they can connect with, is to set their intention before they go in and to say, like, I'm going to smile at everybody. I'm going to shake everybody's hands, or I'm going to meet at least 5 people, 10 people, and I'm going to give them my information and, collect information from them. And I'm going to schedule 3 follow-up, get to know you calls. And by, the end of this, I'm going to have made a friend, somebody that I feel like I really connect with. And that makes it so much more rewarding. And then when you can kind of, after you've done it, you can kind of be like, even if the event's still going on, you can be like, I achieved my goals. I can breathe, drink my water, and just like, I did it,
Yeah.
I think that helps a ton.
Yeah. You touched on so many things that I feel like are really personal to me in a way. Like, yeah, like what I found and something that I coach my executive clients on is that, and suffering from this, some people feel like they're chained by their introversion, right? Like I view myself as an introvert as well. And at some point it was more of a curse than a blessing because I was perceivably, I felt awkward sometimes. You know what I mean? And I felt like there were things that people wouldn't like about me, and I was really self-conscious about it. But what I found is like your ability to look in the mirror and really just take an honest self-inventory of yourself and recognize that everyone else has that same like internal dialogue with themselves, maybe not because they're introverted and awkward, but because of other reasons that might be considered character flaws. Like we all as humans deal with that. And so the way I kind of look at it is like, if we all are dealing with something like that, then none of us have to deal with it because we all, you know what I mean?
Right.
Me being like, so I don't know how much you know about me, Krissy, but I'm a product of homeschooling. And so, yeah. So I didn't graduate high school. I didn't go to college. I don't have any education. So you and I in that regard are kind of on opposite spectrums when it comes to that. And me being the quiet, introverted, shy, sometimes awkward homeschool kid growing up, like people have their stigmas about it and stuff like that. I don't think I fit into too many of those stigmas too bad. I definitely had friends. I definitely got out and socialized and things like that.
Right.
But not having a barometer by putting yourself out there to measure yourself against is the thing that's limiting you, not your self-imposed introversion, if that makes sense. It's not your self-imposed worldview of who you are. And to your point, the more you put yourself out there, I feel like, and what I've learned is that it gives you the little wins, even in social situations where you meet someone new and you have a good discussion with them, or you get someone's phone number, or maybe you're asking a stranger out on a date or whatever it is. Those little wins give us the dopamine that tells us, okay, maybe I am an introvert, but even if I am, like, there's reasons why I don't have to label myself as a hardcore, like, reclusive introvert, like I first thought I was. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. I mean, I feel like it's like a muscle. It's anytime we do something new, we feel super weak and feeble and shaky at the beginning, and then with each, we started rekindled our fitness journey about a year ago, and when I started back at the gym, I might have been using 2.5 pounds for this, 5 pounds for this, 10 pounds for this, whatever, and every time, you keep up with it on your app. And I am determined every single time I'm at the gym to do either more weight or at least one more rep, and because I want that win every time in every category, if I can. Now there's times I have to go backwards. I hurt something and I'm like, well, I was doing 20 pounds in this and now I have to do 10. But yeah, I feel like for sure it just takes practice, and you'll grow with every interaction that you have with others. So yeah, I would encourage any introvert to get out there. And some people are painfully shy, so I know there's a big range of what that means to different people. So I'm not shy, but I'm introverted because I love my time alone to refuel. That's really important to me.
Absolutely. I love the way you put that. And yeah, I feel like I guess something I always tell a lot of my clients, and even in my content, is like, there is nothing in this world worth doing that does not require effort or does not require sacrifice, right? And so a lot of people that I find, I don't know, society sometimes wants to label introverts as like the inferior of the two, right? In some ways. And like, there's some real strong skill sets that, to your point, when you were first talking about this, like, there's a lot of strong skill sets that tend to lean towards introverts. And by allowing that label to not give you the bandwidth or the permission to make that effort in your own little way, and then let those efforts snowball into bigger things, like, who knows what you're capable of unless you try, basically. Right.
Completely. And I've seen people say, in a related topic, maybe talking about like being ADHD, and they're like, well, that's my superpower. And if ADHD can be your superpower, then so can introversion. And so I think maybe flipping the script would be the first step and saying, this is a good thing, and this is why it's a good thing for me. And these are all the benefits that I get from being introverted and all the things that make me great. Let's focus on that first and foremost, before just saying like, hey, I have all these flaws that somebody else needs to fix. Yeah. Because there's probably a lot of things that just honestly don't need to be fixed. And that was exactly what I said today, was stop trying to fix introverts. They're not broken.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Oh, that's such a good way to put it. Awesome. All right, moving on to the next question. This starts off by saying, any tips on successfully leveraging PR to jumpstart a new company? And this person says, I have a SaaS product, a software product in the tech space that was launched within the last 2 months. I built an email list, I'm running ads, and have some revenue coming in. However, the product is very niche, and it's hard to create a lookalike audience for advertising. So I want to switch up my strategy to get a much broader reach. And I think PR is probably my best option. Any suggestions on how to go about doing this? I'm open to hiring a firm, but I'm afraid of partnering with the wrong one.
That's a tough question. Are you allowed to pass?
Oh, yeah, that's okay. So I have something to share about this. And actually, so like, just with what you do in operations, I'm curious if you have a take on it based on what I share. But like, I've found, so my background in marketing, the PR companies that I have rubbed shoulders with, I hate to say it, and I don't want to disparage anyone, but I find that they're very, for lack of a better term, they're very cookie cutter. And so like, unless you have someone that's internal or that is like a freelancer that you've hired to represent you, which I think is a little bit different of a model, something like PR, and I think marketing is the same way, really. Like, you got to understand what it is that you're hiring them for. And a lot of people get disillusioned or romanticize what that really is. Yeah. And so like, I had a PR company reach out to me one time. It's a long story, but they wanted to represent me on certain things. And hearing their process there's nothing about the process that they gave me that didn't sound proprietary compared to any other PR or marketing firm, really. Mm-hmm. And so PR it's really interesting because, like, if I hired a marketing person, their job would be to market my company and use their intellect and their expertise to market my company ongoing. And PR companies don't work that way. They want to have a project and like pitch you on or pitch the media on something specific, right? Because that's how the cycle works. And a lot of people don't realize that that's the model. And so they hire the PR company expecting, and I made this mistake early on when I researched it for myself. They want to hire the company to try and like do an ongoing thing and like retain them. And that's not how they work, basically. But anyway, so from an operational perspective, I don't know if you have any comments about that at all.
It's just not something like, yeah, I mean, I feel like I've always associated like a PR person with somebody who has an image to protect. I don't know, like many people that are there yet, maybe, I don't know, like are normal people supposed to have PR companies, or is that for the big timers?
That's such a great point. And I'm glad you brought that up. That is an excellent way to put it. And that's just the thing, is a lot of companies and small business owners probably that are in the caliber of like you and me that see that as another channel and want to go that route. And so I don't think it is. I mean, a lot of PR companies will have you believe that they can get you on TV and get you book deals or newspapers or magazines or whatever it is. And they might, there might be some merit to that, but is it necessary? Like, the way I look at it is there's that phrase, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. And so they see like the Shark Tanks and the sharks and I don't know who else, like people on TV and stuff. And they assume that a PR company can help them be that. But sometimes, very often, I see a lot of business owners have that vision way too prematurely, and they don't really have the infrastructure, the team or the systems or whatever it is, or even just a product or an offer that really supports the idea of going to PR, because then what happens is they get this influx of inquiries, they get this influx of traffic, and they can't support it, and it ends up being a waste for them in the first place.
That seems like, I feel like it's putting the cart before the horse for most, for most small businesses. The government considers a small business under $42.5 million annually. And most businesses aren't anywhere near that. So when I say small, that's a very big range, and I get that. But most people haven't developed their brand, I don't think, enough, myself obviously included. Like, most people haven't even developed their reach and their brand enough and their following enough. I can't even imagine that PR is really, that seems like the end of, the plan, not the beginning of the plan at all.
Yeah, that's like phase 4, not phase 1.
100%.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah. Awesome. Love it. Okay, last question. Can a business thrive without social media involvement? As someone with extensive content marketing experience, I've never been fond of social media. This person is speaking my language already. It's confusing, and frankly, I don't seem to have a knack for it. My business is in e-commerce, and I feel the necessity to maintain a presence there. Perhaps my approach is all wrong. The return on effort that I put into content creation in terms of engagement, views, and so on feels really insignificant. I'd appreciate any advice or words of encouragement on this.
A few different things there. Can a business be successful without social media? Absolutely. It is absolutely not necessary to have social media. However, it really depends on the type of business that it is. I feel like there are some businesses that are in such demand and in low supply that you could pretty much do anything, and you're still going to have great business. I live in the Phoenix area. When it's 120 degrees and the AC goes out, I'm not going to check somebody's social media to see like if they're really great, if they have good memes and cute reels and all of that. I'm like, just fix my AC. So I think it would completely depend on the business and what you're trying to do with it and who you're trying to attract. Because obviously, if we're trying to reach younger people, you've got to get where they are. And I think it depends too. Like, are you happy with the level of business that you have, or are you trying to grow? And I think for some businesses that social media is going to be integral to that, whereas other businesses, it's just not that important.
Yeah.
I think some people like to spend time on social media, even if they don't need to, because it is in their niche or is in the way.
For sure. Yeah. I think as a lot of business owners, because I know I fall into this trap where we see a lot of people find success and they have a huge following and they get a lot of views or whatever it is on social media, like whatever that is. And we see it often enough happen because if a bunch of brands or influencers or whoever they are getting that kind of reach, then they're the ones we see the most, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so then that kind of gives us this skewed vision of what a business looks like, perhaps. And I think internally, without even realizing it, we as business owners sometimes tell ourselves that that's what we have to aspire for in order to find whatever level of success this other person. Right. And I think that can be a huge pitfall, because I'm a big fan of like people like Seth Godin, who's been around and talk about marketing for I don't know how many decades now. Mm-hmm. Dude has almost no social media, and the social media that he does have is not really even his. It's just someone representing him. And
right.
You know what I mean? And he's found this weird way of being able to amass this huge following without going what would be now traditional means using social media and things like that. And so I think there's something to be said for, whatever your craft is, if you think that you can go about it a different way and it's effective, that's all that really matters. And we don't got to disillusion ourselves with this story we're telling ourselves about, having this level of following or this level of viewers or whatever is what the barometer is for being successful in business.
Completely. There's relevant and then there's relevant. So there's like your social media relevant, like, yeah, cool. Some of us want to be relevant in that regard, but that doesn't mean that we're irrelevant. If we're a lawn care service and we're fully booked and we don't care to grow beyond what we're doing, and then, we're relevant. We're taking care of business. We're taking care of people's, yards, and that's cool. No, I don't think it's necessary for everybody at all.
Yeah. I noticed, I just looked at the question again, and what they said their business is e-commerce. And so like, they're probably asking this question because, again, going back to the kind of that disillusion comment, like they probably recognize that every single other business in their industry is on social media. And so there's their barometer that they're kind of comparing themselves to. And should they have a social media presence as an e-commerce brand? Maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. And I guess if they happen to be listening, like the encouragement I would give for something like that, someone being myself, I'm fortunate that I was invited by TikTok to be a certified creator with them.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, and I see a ton of e-commerce brands finding a lot of success with things like short form video.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think for an e-commerce brand, it's specifically, yeah, you might want to consider it. But the piece of advice I would give for that specifically, I guess, is that don't overthink it and don't stress yourself out about doing things the right way. Do things your way, because all the best creators, especially creators that have short form content or the businesses that have short form content, they're all doing their own thing, and they've just found, their own vein of doing it in a way that resonates with their audience. And that's really what matters.
And it sounds like too, if you don't feel like you're very good at something, you may not do it regularly, and so they might be thinking, well, this content's not really hitting. I only got 14 likes. I'm not very good at this. So they aren't really being consistent. If you're only posting once or twice a week, people aren't really going to look for your stuff, and they're not going to pay that much attention. And so, I'm not saying that you have to post 10 times a day, but you're going to have to commit to some type of like a reasonable schedule to like stay in front of people, kind of top of mind from when we were more interested in traditional advertising, you always want to push that top of mind advertising. You got to continually stay in front of people. And I think that that's what, that's the point. Like when I see the e-commerce businesses come across my social media feed, sometimes it's not, their first or fifth time that they show up on my feed that I click on them, but eventually I might be like, okay, what are they selling exactly? What makes this special? And then I might click on it to get to know it. So I would say definitely stay consistent, even if you don't feel like you're great. And then you can always ask for help or hire somebody, part-time or whatever to give you some tips, some pointers, or just to do it for you. And but I agree with what you said, is like stay true to who you actually are, because there's literally over 7 billion other people out there. You can really only be yourself and be your own brand and be consistent in it. And just like, again, going back to boring Nancy, just like have that integrity of like owning who you are as a person and just stick with that.
Yeah. And you touched on a couple other things I think are important too, like going back to what we were saying about, when you were talking about the analogy of going to the gym and building up your fitness and stuff like that. Again, like you don't do anything well without putting a little bit of effort, and to your point, being consistent. And so like you could get better in social media, but how much effort are you putting in to make an effort and actually try and have a goal for it? And I think that the answer to that question is a big reflection on whatever your struggle is with it. And then also I'm a big like voice for being authentic as well, especially in your content, because that's how you ultimately find the right people that need your product and need what you have to offer. That's, whatever flavor of product or service that you have to bless the world with. Like that's how people find you. And it's not until you're authentic and you just take ownership of it that's going to happen.
I think it's interesting too, because you might really, really be initially attracted to a certain brand or person and how they present themselves at first, and then have like the opposite reaction, not to make that person feel worse. But, I've seen people on social media and I'm like, oh, they have a cool concept. But then the more they post, I'm like, oh, I really don't like that person at all. Like, do I delete them? And I've asked myself this question several times, and I've never posted about it, but I've wanted to, is like, will you really do business with somebody you really, really don't like on social media? Like, if you think that they're like maybe a good resource for you, maybe one of the best, maybe not the best in the industry because you don't know all those people, but like, and then at what principled point do you say like, okay, enough's enough, I can't do business with this person? Like they've, and then determining like, do your lines even matter in these situations? Like, am I just being weird?
Yeah.
I don't know, you ever thought about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And kind of along those lines, if like you're associating with these people, whether personally or online or whatever, like I think at some point you got to ask yourself the question, like, the people I'm surrounding myself with, either online or personally in person, are these people that are going to elevate me or like de-escalate me? And if the answer is like not that elevating you, then that's a pretty good sign of like, not only would you not do business with them, but they in some way, shape or form, either mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, whatever, they're holding you back and bringing you down. And so it's important to to take inventory of that, I think, and recognize the impact, even though it might be subtle, that it's having on you. So.
Yeah, I think one of the I don't know, I don't think that people should necessarily be like opinionated or apolitical or you just like anti whatever, because like you said, you have to be personal, but then like I think you have to be prepared. Like you have to ask yourself, how passionate, if I'm going to post about this specific thing that could turn people away, like, is it part of my purpose and passion to share this? Or am I just sharing it because I'm in a certain kind of mood today? Because in the long run, like if you keep sharing stuff that's maybe a detraction from what you're offering, that can be really tough too. But if it means that much to you, like if you really are that passionate about it, then maybe that is part of like sticking to who you are and having, that integrity and how you present yourself, because maybe it's just that valuable to who you are as a person.
So that's the last question. And so usually to wrap up with the last segment, I have a question for you, Krissy.
Okay.
So to put you on the spot, I love doing this with our guests because I find that it really opens up, it gives you an opportunity to really share something you're passionate about. So the question is, what is a question that I should have asked you by now that with your answer, it's something that you believe the world needs to hear?
In my intro, I alluded to really loving working with couples who are trying to work together as business owners, or who are already working together as business owners. So I think I'm an incredible partner for Byron, tooting my own horn. And but I think, I'm approached by men mostly who say, I really want my wife to quit her job and I want her to work with me in my business. I want her to be able to travel with me, but she doesn't really see my vision, and so on and so forth. And then he starts kind of like trying to build this business that he doesn't really feel like she understands or is bought into. And then for a time, there's this gradual, like kind of drifting away from each other, and it creates real tension and real problems. So I love helping people resolve those issues and figure out how can you guys work together in the business? And then those issues that come while working together, like how do we solve those? So I'm super solution driven, and that's what I love doing.
I'd love to unpack this with you a little bit if you're open to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, cool. So because this is something I'm super passionate about, but it's not like super aligned with my content, so I don't talk about it very often.
Sure.
But like I've taken a lot of, maybe the last 2 years, I've taken a lot of notice about the whole masculine feminine dynamic with a lot of things in society, with relationships, whatever it is. And just what I've seen just with things, content that I consume or books that I read and things like that, is I'm curious if you would agree with this or not, just based on what I've seen, which is that there's this implication or suggestion that men are, there's I don't know if the expectation is the right word, but they're expected to be the leaders, and like women, for lack of a better term, if just follow along. I'm trying not to say it in a way, like I don't mean it the way it sounds, but like yeah, maybe that's a word, but it has such a negative connotation, and I don't intend it that way. And I think for me personally, for men and women, if it's to be framed in a positive light, then that submission can actually be the very thing that the man leads to help lead the vision. Does that make sense? So I'm curious. That's just me observing, not knowing too much, not being an authority on this topic. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it.
In general or in business. So we could talk about either, but I guess I do think men are encouraged to lead and women are encouraged to follow. And that is a very complex topic. And there's obviously historical and religious reasons why that is pointed out consistently. And I think sometimes it can cause problems that people aren't necessarily expecting. And an example of that is, say the husband does want to start a business and he's kind of doing it maybe on the side, but he's trying to do it to leave his current employment situation. I don't think that men have really been trained to really see their wives as strong advisors. And because of gender roles, they may talk to their dads or their uncles or their friends or other businessmen, but forget that their wife is also intelligent. And so they start to make these decisions unilaterally, and then they're confused when their wives aren't fully supportive, but their wives are probably freaking out a little bit. Like, what are you doing? You haven't talked to me about it. You spent $5,000 on this course. We never, really agreed that that was where we were going with all this, and all these things start happening. And so she starts feeling like she's spiraling a little bit. And then he's like, all you're doing is criticizing me. And you're not supporting me. I just need you to support me. That's the thing I hear the most from men. She doesn't support me. I'm like, but does she understand what you're doing? Have you explained your vision to her? Have you asked her for feedback? Oh, I asked her for feedback one time, and all she did was ask me a bunch of questions, and it made me feel awful. Well, she asked you a bunch of questions because she's intelligent and she's trying to help you. Like, it may sound like she's saying that's dumb, but she might just be saying, hey, let me help you understand your avatar more, the direction of your business, where you're going, a timetable, the investment. Like, use her as a resource, and she will be a much bigger supporter for you. So I think that's just one way that those gender roles or those expected norms can cause some issues, and I love that my relationship is very detached from that. My husband and I work really well together. He likes that I have an opinion about business. He seeks my counsel. He listens to it. We don't always agree, and he may make decisions that aren't, in line, but, he asked my opinion, and he cares about what I had to say, and he asks me first, and I'm not the last to know. Being the last to know is a terrible way to feel. And then he makes sure I get fed during the day. Like, that should be my job. And I do it too. But like, a lot of times, like, he gets up from his desk after 4 or 5 straight appointments and then goes and makes sandwiches. That's the woman's job. But we keep the machine going by being attentive to what we as individuals need, not what we need as a gender.
Well, Krissy, it has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for just that whole dialogue around your special question that I asked you. That was really good, and that's what I was hoping for. So Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for being you and being an inspiration to your own community. I think that's awesome. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so our business is CFO, like Chief Financial Officer, AF, like accounting and finance. So CFOAF.com. And you can find us there and schedule an appointment if you want to get to know us a little bit better and see what we could do to help you. Or if you want help with your relationship stuff with you and your spouse working together, I would love to dive into that with you as well.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, Krissy. And if you guys, go look up Krissy and CFOAF. And thank you so much for listening to the Unscripted Success podcast. We'll catch you on the next episode.